you. Thank you, Andrew. I'll start by confessing to feeling like a bit of a fraud standing up here. I did designate 2017 to entrench, or rather challenge the entrenched pessimism under which I've operated for most of my life. And the reason, just to explain why I'm doing that, is that I'm interested in food. Food is the single biggest impact that humans have had on nature, and it continues to be that. It's the single biggest cause of biodiversity loss. It's the single biggest source of CO2 emissions. It's by far the biggest use of fresh water. Soil erosion is mainly caused by food. Goes on. And we're being told, indeed, I would call this the dominant paradigm in the food system at the moment. We're being told we need to double food production or increase it by 50%, depending on who you're listening to prevent starvation when there are 9 billion people on the planet by 2050. So if we're going to double already our biggest problem, and what we're told is that even if we completely replaced all energy sources with clean energy, food production by itself would push us above the 2 degrees warming that is the maximum we can safely operate within. These trends are not just carrying on, they're accelerating. They're being driven, I would argue, by the kind of companies that I've thrown up at random pretty much. Their agenda is that we need, they use this word need, we need this food. Now I contest that. If I successfully marketed to everyone in this room a can of Coca-Cola, then arguably, yeah, I need 1,000 cans of Coca-Cola. But that's a very different kind of need from any kind of need that we would associate with true human needs. Indeed, I would argue that what we need to do is stop this bulldozer in its tracks, because this food production system is the single biggest threat, not just to the environment, but to long-term food security, because by undermining our biosphere, we really could bring about a situation where it's going to be very, very difficult to feed everyone on the planet. But at the moment, and this is the silver lining to the cloud, we actually have plenty of food. We already grow enough food to feed 12 billion people. And I'm not going to go too much into the data that I generated to demonstrate this case, but suffice it to say that, have I got a pointer? No. Can I go back to that chart? Sorry. This chart demonstrates that basically all rich countries have between 1.5 times and 2 times the amount of food that their populations actually need available to them in their shops and restaurants. So a country like the US has twice as many calories as it needs. And not only is that causing environmental damage, as I've mentioned, we all know it's the root cause of many of the lifestyle diseases that our civilization is being plagued by. So you have this colossal double whammy problem being caused by overproduction at its root. So the question I pose to myself is how can we take on the food system? The food is an amazing galvanizing topic. We all make choices around food every single day. It's very empowering that we, the citizens of the world, are the ones that create the food system. We're paying for it, we buy into it, we consume it, we make it part of our bodies. And theoretically, at least, the solutions to this problem are, by and large, delicious and nutritious, involving sustainable, accessible food for all. So, if one is going to challenge this massive edifice, you've got to go for its soft underbelly, the place where it's most vulnerable. And the one that I chose, the kind of Achilles heel of the food system, was food waste. I calculated in my book that around 1/3 of all food was being wasted in the world, and that was a conservative estimate. Since I calculated that in my book in 2009, it's been endorsed by the likes of the United Nations and many other bigger institutions. So 1/3 of the world's food is being wasted, and we're saying we need more and more food. Now, when I started on food waste, it was a pretty lonely environment to be operating in. There was really nothing. But over the last several years, there has been a tidal wave of interest in this. Tomorrow, I'm going to be at the Tribeca Film Festival launching a film called Wasted with Anthony Bourdain. some of the biggest chefs in the world are getting involved in food waste. You cannot be a big food company now without a bunch of food waste policies. Governments are piling in, and there's been mass behavior change, measurable mass behavior change. In the UK, we've measured it pretty well, 21% reduction in household food waste since 2007. It's not enough, but it shows that we can shift this needle. So my strategy in my book was to identify some of the most egregious instances of food waste, to tell the narrative about how absurd our food system was. This subsequent work that my organization that I founded, Feedback, did and has been doing is looking into the supply chains of our supermarkets. This is 1,000 tons of citrus fruit being wasted in Peru. I visited Peru with the National Geographic about 2 years ago, and it was the front cover story on the National Geographic magazine, if anyone saw it. And these oranges are not being wasted because there's anything wrong with them, but because of these minor skin blemishes. Nothing wrong with the fruit whatsoever. And if you're having difficulty seeing those minor skin blemishes, that's kind of the point. It's a really obvious, blatantly stupid waste of resources in a country with millions of hungry people in it. My challenge is, like, if we're paying for that, what else are we paying for in this food system? Last time I was here, I spoke about a success story that my organization had achieved. We'd found that in Kenya, people were growing beans for European supermarkets, and that there was a colossal amount of waste in that supply chain. And I picked up on the green bean story because, well, you'll notice that these have been trimmed. But they've been trimmed in a funny way. They've been trimmed not at the end of the bean, but almost halfway through the bean. And that's because the punnet that they have to go into is exactly 9 centimeters long, and the beans didn't know they had to be 9 centimeters long. They grew all sorts of different lengths. And to get them into these stupid punnets, Kenyan farmers were trimming off 20% of the bean. These are the perfect beans. All the bent beans, the not perfectly green beans, the twisty ones, the lumpy ones, they've all been left on the farm already, 30–40% wasted at that stage. And then you get the best beans, and you're wasting 20% of the bean. So my organization identified this as something everyone can agree is totally ridiculous. But identifying the problem, as we've been talking about today, is not enough. You've got to propose the solution and celebrate it. And I came up with this format back in 2009, feeding 5,000 people with food that otherwise would be wasted, to galvanize a movement globally against this problem. Feeding the 5,000 has become a format that we've now done in 50 cities worldwide. Indeed, this time last year, out in Ronald Reagan Plaza. We did it right here with the support of great local organizations like DC Central Kitchen, with the mayor of DC. And it's a fantastic, fantastic way of doing it. Now, I want you guys to help me actually lift myself out of optimism. Any of you know anyone in LA? Hands up. We're doing Feeding the 5,000 in LA on May the 4th. Please tell all of your friends about it. Come and have a free lunch on us. We've been organizing these events as a way of kind of proposing a visionary solution to this colossal problem. We've done it across Europe, across America with the help of the Rockefeller Foundation, our funders here in the US. We've done it in Africa, where we have loads of food waste in Kenya, and millions of hungry people. And we take this movement, we take the headlines of this movement to the corporates who are responsible for a lot of the food waste. And when I was last here, I pointed out that Tesco, this is our biggest supermarket in the UK, had changed its bean policy as a result of our campaign. And we felt we'd got halfway. Instead of topping and tailing, they were just taking the top off. Now that measure cut food waste by 30% overnight, which translated across the sector in Kenya alone, amounted to around $20 million of beans, potentially. That's such an obvious little tweak to make. But since then, we got the other half of the way. Now, they don't trim the beans at all. And guess what? They found that the shelf life of the bean massively extended because you didn't have to cut the bean, and that's where it goes off. And customers preferred it. So it's kind of that kind of example that tells the story about how absurd our system is. And it's not just tweaks like that. We've achieved regulatory change. So one of the problems these farmers get is cancellations from supermarkets, where an entire crop, such as this one, isn't going to be harvested because the supermarket cancelled the order at the last minute. These ladies are destroying an entire crop of basil for the same reason. In the UK, we passed a law, the Groceries Code Adjudicator Act, and we now have a system being born across Europe that stops supermarkets from cancelling orders. Indeed, you can get a fine of up to 1% of your turnover if you do that. So it's something that is really having impact. Mass behavior change, corporate change, regulatory change. I'm not satisfied, though. There are still enormous mountains of food waste, and they make me angry. And this is an example. This was in 2008, and I visited a sandwich factory making sandwiches for UK supermarkets. And all of the heels of the loaf, and indeed the first slice inside the loaf, 4 slices for every bread, were going into the skip. 13,000 slices of fresh bread every single day. Day fresh bread. And it's happening everywhere. Oh, God, I'd been in Pakistan that year, and there were people who couldn't afford wheat because there was a price spike, remember, 2008. And this made me really, really angry. And, you know, we tried to persuade them to, I don't know, make breadcrumbs or do anything. And as a demonstration of how delicious this kind of leftover bread can be, Chef Del Hayes from the Ronald Reagan building has cooked you up some amazing leftover bread, leftover bagel recipes, which you're going to eat today, bread and butter pudding and all sorts of other like traditional uses of waste or leftover bread. So we can all eat our way out of this problem. And that's obviously what we should be doing. But I wanted a scalable solution because this is happening everywhere. And that was the birth, as you heard at the beginning, of my latest little innovation, Toast Ale. So we brew delicious craft ale out of waste bread. Jamie Oliver was the first person to drink this on television. It's become a really successful company in the in the UK rather. 100% of the profits get recycled and go into my non-profit, Feedback. And today, we're launching our crowdfunder for Toast Ale to be launched in New York State after overcoming all of the incredible legal steps that I mean, prohibition would be so much easier to negotiate. But our proposal is that we can get wasted on waste, when Cargill and Monsanto say we need their solutions, we say we need this. Any home bakers needing the bread? We need our solution to food waste. And we really need everyone to be part of this, to drink our way, to party our way. If we're going to beat those who are destroying the planet, we've got to throw a better party than them. And that is what Toast Ale is all about. It's a message in a bottle. It's a way of celebrating the delicious, nutritious solutions. And anyone who wants to join this revolution, sorry, that's the last one, can go onto Indiegogo, put into Google, Indiegogo Toast Ale. You'll find our crowdfunder. Launch today. Get involved. Join us. Thank you very much.
Wow.